Okay, a good night Shabbos to everybody. Probably by now everybody knows the news that Eretz Yisrael is in the next stage of battling those who seek its destruction, and the destruction really of a large swath of the world. And they're also in grave danger, and these are not normal times that we're living through. This might be some of the most significant moments in Israel's very short history. And right now our primary concern is the safety and security of Achinu B'nai Yisrael, our brothers and sisters. And I think really, as probably the group of Jews here that's up perhaps the earliest, at least in these communities, in this setting, I think we should start with a Kapitel Tehillim first, before we begin. So let's do that together now, and have them in mind. Shir l'malos v'mamakim kasicha Adonai shema b'koili tiyaz lecha kashuvos kol tachanunai Ema Binah yistishma Adonai miyamayim Ki imcha slicha leman tivarei Ki v'yis Adonai kivsa nafshi v'ledvarei echalti Nafshi l'Adonai mishayim laboiker SHIURIM laboiker Yachel Yisrael Adonai Ki am Adonai hachesed v'arbei yemei fedor V'hu yiftes Yisrael mikol nesai. Okay, and obviously it goes without saying that our learning should be as a schus for protection for all of those who need that the Shomer Yisrael should stand over them and guarding them. And just in the context of our own little chabura and the process that we've been undergoing and the journey that we've taken, especially recently, in the context of everything that we just learned in Torah Chof, and in the context of what we're learning here, and beginning Torah Chof Aleph, that again, like I posted to the group yesterday, the chances that of all the 411 teachings of Rebbe Nachman's Torah is that there's one on Parshas Ba'alaischa that begins with the word Ba'alaischa Saneres, that with zero planning, and that on Erev Shabbos Parshas Ba'alaischa, this should be the teaching, and I wasn't aware of it because I didn't have such clarity in the sefer to know what's. And I opened it yesterday to begin to prepare to look it over, and it's Ba'alaischa Saneres. So what do we know? It's all mysteries, but I believe that nothing that happens is for a stam, and it should be the beginning of the Geulah, Be'ezus Hashem, the final Geulah. So today's shir is kindly sponsored by Bernard Bolag as a schus for the Refuah Shlema of Tinokas Bas Geulah Zissel B'Seich Shar, all those in Klal Yisrael who need refuah and tikkun of every kind, the ruchnis of Gashmis. So let's jump in B'siyata D'Shmaya. We begin Torah Chof Aleph, which, like I just mentioned, is commenting on Ba'alaischa as Haneres, which uncharacteristically, usually that opening line is returned to at the very end of the teaching. Rebbe Nachman will get to that then. But over here we're going to encounter right in the beginning of the lesson already Ba'alaischa as Haneres. But before we begin, Torah Chof stirred something inside of me, how important it is to learn the Torahs in the context of the Chayei Moharan, which adds a whole different dynamic to it. Once you understand the background, you understand some of the biographical, anecdotal elements that serve as the foundation for the teaching. So very briefly, I'm just going to read to you a couple of inyanim that they bring over here in this edition, but it's all in Chayei Moharan, but over here it's just for ease. They've brought it in the beginning of each Torah. So again, you don't have this inside. I'm just going to tell it to you outside. He writes over here that in the beginning of the summer of that year, 1804, which is the same year as Torah Chof was revealed, which is Tav Kuf Samach Daled, it's brought in Chai Moran, that this teaching was given over in well, not really in full, but in large part on Shabbos Nachamu, on Parshas Veschanan Yud Gimel Av in the year 1804. And Rav Nosson writes, "Ba'isar Kayitz, in that summer, Yischalei Ma'atar Hatika Tamir V'Sasim." Rebbe Nachman began to give over that teaching. He was giving over bit by bit, piece by piece, until finally Shabbos Nachman gave over the whole thing. And prior to this, about 2 weeks before the giving over of this Torah, Rebbe Nosson says, "I'm out to the fun of Erev Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av. I stood before him on Erev Rosh Chodesh Av. It was Sunday afternoon. At the time where we had finished, you don't eat meat right before the 9 days, and we had finished eating dinner. And he says, Rebbe Nachman was in a terrifying mood. And he says, whoever saw him became very scared. And he was laying in bed, and he was silent. And he was thinking the thoughts that he was thinking. Says Rav Nosson, I stood before him, trembling and shaking and bewildered. And we stood there for a few hours in silence, Rav Nosson says. And then he opened his mouth and he said the following. He opened his mouth and he said, Shabbos, meaning because it was Sunday, so yesterday, I cried a lot in front of Hashem. And I said to Hashem, why is it that everything that I want to do, it takes such mysterious nefesh for me? Yiddishkeit was difficult for him, didn't come easy. I feel like I may have to give my life for every detail. We were learning tzadikim kechut hasayra, where every single detail that Satan is fighting them at every turn. The siper, listen to the ad kedei kach, and it should give us tremendous chizuk, which is why Rebbe Nachman records this. Every morning when I get up and I want to get up to daven, I can't open my mouth, can't daven. I have nothing to encourage myself, to give me strength. So I have to try to think of some melody, some nigun, to inspire me and to open up, my mind, to give myself strength with some song. And I can't remember any nigunim. My mind, my mind is just totally closed. He doesn't know how he's going to get up and down. This is Rebbe Nachman. This is Tzadik Hadar. And it doesn't matter. You got to daven. So, we spoke, like he just mentioned, comfortable, not comfortable. You got to do it. He stood up and he davened. And then once he got up and he began to daven, then all of a sudden the gates would open up and the gunim would come down. And he would begin to feel. That's the way it was with the Rebbe. Every detail is Mesiras Nefesh. Rav Nosson goes on to say, if this was true about it, Tzaddik, Kaddish, Noyer, Kamoisai, so certainly us, the little manias that we have, we push past it. And then like we see from the Rebbe, once we push past it and once we're in it, and I see this in my own life, Keseder, I'm sure many of us feel the same way. Sometimes a person, I get sometimes very tired, or get up early, go to sleep late, and I get tired in the middle of the day, and there's a part of us that wants to go to sleep. I find that if I don't allow myself, and I'll do something else. I'm going to do exercise. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to do something else, and then with time it passes. Eventually, it hits you a little bit later, but but it'll pass. And then it becomes a little bit easier if you push yourself. You can push yourself, and this is what he says. Okay, more specific, and that's so. Meaning, it's out of that context. We're going to learn out of that context a lot of inyanim in Torah of Aleph. And then more specifically, Siper Lefanai Va'amar, right before Rebbe Nachman gave over this Torah to be printed, Bezeh Shabbos, before he taught it, this Torah, Shekodim Rosh Chodesh Av Tav Kuf Samach Daled, Hikshu kushya lamala v'ani amarti alei teretz. Rebbe Nachman says there was a question that was asked in the Beis Din Shalmala, and I gave the answer to it. This is what the Rebbe said. What was the question? The question was, Ki yesh makifin eisel sechel. We're going to learn now about makifin. There are concepts that are pnimium, that are internal, meaning they enter the brain, they're comprehensible, we're able to understand them. And then there are nyanim that are makifim. Just remember I had a dream last night where I was sitting in some kind of setting to teach Torah, I think it was Shabbos, and I kept on stopping to take questions, and for some reason I was always only looking to my right. Because I was sitting at a long table like this, and I could either look, and I was like, wow, okay, these two people are the only ones with questions. And then I took to my left, and like 7 people had their hands up, and I was completely disregarding them. And then I said, the Gemara in Tainus, b'chol pino sha'ata poina, you turn to the yamin. That's why I'm always turning to the right. I don't know what this means. I have to think more about it, but that was just, I was doing that, and I'm like, wait, this sounds familiar. So if anybody has questions, you're welcome. It's funny, because usually I turn to this side, because there are more people on this side. Kitzer. It's also relevant to this Torah. But the bottom line is, yesh makifin eitzah seicha. So he said that there are some ideas that aren't comprehended. They float above. They're called makifin. They surround because they're not in. We wear them like a crown. They're above, but they don't enter the mind. The human brain can't comprehend them. So we can have a foggy, vague notion of certain concepts, and then I'm sure there are things that are even beyond any thought because we have no frame of reference for them at all, not logically, conceptually, intellectually in any way. It's just completely beyond us. But at least there are things that we can grasp, like for example the concept of lamalam and azman, right? That which is above time. That's a makif. It's not a pnim. We understand what time is, and we can theoretically at least have some kind of inkling of some, because we know that time is haya and avar haya and asid, right? So we can think of something that has an endless haya, has an endless asid, and has an endless hove, and so we could say, okay, that's lamal azman, but that's a makif. Our brains can't understand such a thing because we completely live in time. But it's not something that's beyond the makif. It's a makif, but it's not a pnim. Okay, and there are going to be other examples that we're going to learn within the context of the Torah, which we'll get to. The yesh makif on the Torah, and says the Rebbe, there are makifin for the Torah. This was the question that was asked in Shemayim that the Rebbe gave the answer to. He said that there are makifin to the Torah, shemakif la Torah ve'ein nechnas l'seicha Torah. They surround the Torah, but they're not yet able to be brought down into Torah itself. Uva hamakifin, and even in the realm of the makifin, right, of those ideas that are so vastly beyond the human consciousness that it cannot be brought inside. Some of them are almost accessible, so they're like in front of our eyes, like they're almost there. But they're hovering above, and they're not in. And like I said, there are things that are even beyond that are totally removed from us that we might not even know about yet. And in learning Torah, it's the same thing. A person's, opening up a Succah. There's the idea that you're dealing with, and then there's the part of it that you understand, the part of it that you don't, and then there's like the next chapter, which opens it up into a whole new realm. That's mashu acher legamri. That's something else, right? And like if you're learning one of the more halachic svarim, Shef Shmaitza, you're learning one of these. So every parak expands this, so you think you understand it, because here, it's machlekes between, the let's say the Rambam and the Rashba, and you think that you're understanding. Okay, like that's I could figure that out. There's machlekes as to whether what's in the beginning of Shef Shmaitza, whether Safik Diaraisa L'Chumra, right? Is that Menat Torah or not? That's how he opens it up, right? And you think you understand that, and then it's good, and then you turn to the next page, and all of a sudden he cracks it open in a whole nother way, and then a whole nother way, and then more and more information, and then it's like, oh, okay, it's got a lot harder, and that's how it goes, right? These are makifin, and then there's that which is beyond makifin. Makifin behelim shaloi bo adayin afilu lo makifin v'hu b'chinas ibur. It's the aspect of pregnancy, like it's not birthed yet. So the question was, what is it that enables those makifin to enter down and become pnim? And when that happens, so it's like Tetris, like what, or not Tetris really, it's like some other game. Yeah, maybe Tetris, right? When you reach a certain combination, maybe they disappear and the next blocks fall down. Is that Tetris? Yeah, mamish Tetris, right? So what would cause the makifim become panimium, and the memela, the next Tetris blocks, bricks, whatever they are, right above that will become makifin. Right? How can we shift the whole thing down? Which essentially, from the human consciousness, means how can we expand human consciousness so that we should be able to be masig the makifin, and then the next layer can come down and channel different. That was what was asked in Shemayim. So you have to understand the urgency, right? That means that it's not stam. It's just someone in Shemayim threw out this question. This is an urgent necessity for Klal Yisrael before the Geulah. Meaning, how can we move this thing forward? People aren't getting it. Right? Their minds are too constricted. How do we help that the makifin should enter in and become pnimian? And the Rebbe gave the answer. Right? In a certain sense, the Rebbe is the answer. The Rebbe's Torahs are the answer. They are consciousness expanding, as we've experienced. והמקיפין של השכל ייכנסו לתוך השכל פנימי, דהיינו שמתחילה יבוא ויזכר למקיפין של התורה מההלל למקיפין. First, the hidden will become מקיפין, ואחר כך ייכנסו המקיפין של התורה לפנים. Actually, it starts it right. So he says starts the other way. First, from above will enter, and that will sort of push down all of the different layers, as we're going to learn. וכן המקיפין של השכל, etc. Okay, so that's what Rebbe Nachman said. This Torah is the answer. Achar kach, we'll do this last piece and then we'll start. Achar kach amati oilu fanavad achar shkiya. Then Rebbe Nachman says, I stood until sunset after he revealed the Torah. B'seichach nichnas lav hameshar shaloi. And then his servant entered. Va'amar b'zu his gabbai. Va'amar b'zeh alashan, and he said, Rebbe, give geld lecht. He said, Rebbe, I need money to pay for the candles in the shul, whatever it was. Obviously, it wasn't Shabbos, right? So whenever, I'm not sure exactly the dates. Yeah. Oh, maybe it was that Sunday, maybe, right? Because he said Bezeh Shabbos. No, but this was 2 weeks earlier. I'm not exactly sure. I have to look it up. It's not relevant right now. I'm sure it's relevant, but not for now. But it wasn't Shabbos. But he came in and he said, Rebbe, I need money to buy for lecht, right? It's like, these were the issues in the early 1800s. We don't really have that trouble anymore. But we need to pay for the electricity. But they didn't have to buy candles or else it's going to be pitch black. So that's what he asked. Anavar Amar Elai, Rebbe Nachman looked up at Rebbe Nachman and he said, Hashamata Mashu Aimer. You heard what he just said? Rebbe, give geld auf lecht. Rebbe, give money so I should pay for candles. Gama zet tiskar. Rebbe Nachman said, remember that, ki gam hu teretz halakushya. That's also an answer to the question. The way that the Rebbe lived, and the way that people with expanded consciousness lives, is that there's nothing that's not part of the nothing that's not part of it. And one day it's going to be revealed how even the most mundane, separate, disconnected experiences, comments people made. You're driving down the street, you see an advertisement flash by, and you remember the slogan. There's nothing that isn't part and parcel of the unfolding. We just don't have an expanded enough consciousness to be able to pick up on it and to be able to appreciate it, but we will. We will. Everything is a message. Everything. And to Rebbe Nachman, who was living on that level, it was simple to him that if at the time of this Torah he came in and said this to the Rebbe, that's not a disconnected thing. That's part and parcel of the unfolding. The Rebbe says, "Shamata mashu aimer kama zet tiskar." Remember that too. Kigam hu teretz halakushya. This is also part of the answer. Hainu halakushya na be'inin amakifin. And he said, "Imtia ish kasher tizkala havenzais." If you'll be a kosher Jew, if you'll be live the right way, you're going to understand this. And then Rebbe Nachman says, "Tehila le'el yizbarach." He says, "Praise Hashem, kvar hivanti ma'at kot mizeh." I did understand a little bit of this. Okay, so let's begin. Torah Chof Aleph. Pirka Riviyah de Sefer de Tzniusa. This Torah comments on the 4th chapter in Sefer de Tzniusa, which begins Atika Tamir V'Sasin. That Atik, which is an aspect of Keser, which is the parts of Keser, the Kutza da Ois Yud, Atik is Tamiristim. It's absolutely hidden. Like we learned in Torah Vav, Keser is the Kisei de Miskasia. right? Remember? Keser is completely hidden. It's miskasia. It's kvoid elikim haster davar is the bechin of keser, like we learned in Torah Vav. This is atika tmiristim, and the line goes on to say that zeir, which is zeir anpin, is sometimes revealed and sometimes not revealed, or is both revealed and hidden. There's the revealed aspect and then the hidden aspect. Meaning in that place, which is something else that we learned maybe in Torah Yud Aleph, I believe, maybe Yud Gimel, one of those early Yuds, where we learned about the great chesed it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself in names. You remember? We learned about East and West and the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a matana, that he allows us to interact with him on a revealed level. This is a great chesed, and that's in Zer Anpin, where you have the midos, and you have chesed Geulah and tiferes, and you have the shemos and elikim and yud kevavke, and we could start to sort of relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understand the way that Hashem is acting through various midos that we experience in our lives. Okay, Erev Shabbos Parshas Ba'aloischa. Ba'aloischa es haneres v'chulu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, telling Aaron, that when Aaron lights the menorah ba'aloischa haneres, al mul pnei menorah to Shivas haneres, right? That the candle should be inclined toward the center. And Rashi says, what's the word ba'aloischa haneres? It could have been, when you come to be madlik the neres. There are any number of words that could have been used. Ba'aloischa, when you elevate it up. Perish Rashi shetehei shalheves olam eila. Very famous Rashi, that the job of the Kohen Gadol is just to hold the candle just long enough for the wick to catch on, and then to make sure that it can light on its own, right? And to hold it there for long enough that should happen, but not too long. Meaning once it's olam eila, you pull it away, but not to pull it away too soon, right? And that's very, very important. You could already see over here, even before we said anything, a reference to what the misharis had come in, because the whole Torah is on ba'aloischa haneres, and of course he would come in and say, Rebbe, give gelt of neres. Ksiv says the Heilige Rebbe, Succah Geulah Val Kol Yisrael, Amen va'amen. I'm telling you, these are mysteries of mysteries. What's happening now? I really do. You could call me crazy. I believe that our chabura has a big impact on the world, and I don't think that what we're doing here is disconnected from what's happening out there. Maybe not any more or less than anything that any Jew is doing in any place is connected and changing the whole world. But there's a certain mysterious element that underlies our avodas here. Says the Heilige Rebbe Succah Geulah, Ksiv, it's written, Achar v'kedem tzartani. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Achar v'kedem tzartani, which on a literal level means you've constricted me, you've made me stuck, like tsar, like narrow. Achar v'kedem, both from the back and the front, I have nowhere to go. Right, something similar to Klal Yisrael on the banks of the Yam Suf, where the Yam is in front, Power is in back, and there's nowhere to run. Achar v'kedem tzartani. That's what it means al pi pshat. Says the Rebbe, okay, but tsar could mean to be narrow or narrowness, but it could also mean a lashon of creating. Yitzirah is also the same shirish, right? Tsar. We learned in the previous Torah about a tzur, right? Which is also not disconnected. It's also relevant. So the Rebbe says, Achar v'kedem tzartani. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Achar and Kedem. So what's the Achar and Kedem? What is the aspect of back and front? Ki yesh sechel, says the tzaddik, there's a sechel she'adam masagus alidei hakdamis rabbis. There's a certain kind of intellect that a person can only access through many, many, many hakdamas. One of the reasons that learning Pnimius HaTorah is so difficult is because it requires many, many hakdamas. We had 5 hours of hakdama before we could open Torah Aleph, right? And even then, I would have spent much longer, but the Chaver were itching to learn, but it requires like hours and hours and hours of hakdamas. And then a person can open up, one of the deeper sefarim, and you sense the depth and the beauty because you're familiar a little bit with the topics. But there's a sechel that a person's only masig through many, many hakdamas. V'aseichel hazeh mechuna b'shem achar. That intellect is called, therefore, achar. Why? Because it's delayed. It's achar. It stands me'achar, right, after the process of going through the limud of all the different all the different akdamas, introductions. V'yesh sechel, but then there's another kind of intellect, shebala adam b'li shum akdama, that just literally just enters into the person's mind, b'li shum akdama ela idei shefa eliki, and that's straight from Shemayim, where it's not an intellectual process where we go from first principles, from A to B, B to C, C to D, and then we get to E, and a person goes through a process. It's just a one fell swoop. It's like, we would call it like a eureka moment or an epiphany. That is the English word for it, where it just comes right down into a person's mind. It changes everything. An Einfall, yeah. Kedem, right? So there's achar, and then there's something called kedem. That's just first and foremost, it's already understood. V'shem panim, it's like the face. V'eslavas halev noilad machmas tnuas sechel. And the Rebbe said that if we want to have warm hearts, which is the whole thing of Breslev, is leiv basar, if we want to have a heart of flesh, a feeling heart, a compassionate heart, if we want to have the hislavus, the fire necessary, going back to Torah Chof, because all the Torahs are connected, to be able to be mamshich, diburim, chamim, kigachalim, right, from the leiv ha'elyon that we were learning about, that hislavus halev, leiv ha'elyon, hislavus, the fire, lahav, is machmas tnuas ha'sechel. The way to do that is through tnuas ha'sechel, which is the movement of the mind. Ki teva tnuas shamoy lecham. As the Rebbe said, it's true in physics. Movement creates heat. Friction, right? Person rubs their hand very quickly and it feels warm. Anything, a person runs and a person sweats, a person gets hot. Movement generates heat. Says the Rebbe, how are we going to generate heat in the heart? By the Rebbe, this was a primary way is the movement of the mind, which is exactly what Likutei Moharan is. Concept to concept, connection to connection, Maimer Chazal to Maimer Chazal, boom, 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 openings, fireworks, mamish fireworks, pew, 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 pew. And then you feel something, you come alive, you come awake. And then, some of the chavers say sometimes it's difficult because we go straight from here into davening. And I say, no, when you come into davening, you need to shut off the brain and just ride the wave of the heart. Right now, it shouldn't spend, otherwise we'll spend the whole davening still contemplating not good. Right? What we should do is carry on with the fire that we feel and bring that into tefillah. That's the avodah. Shut off the brain for the tefillah part, and then feel it. It just so happens to be that it will remain there subliminally in such a way, and I've experienced this, that all of a sudden you start to see the Torah in different parts of davening. I don't know if you felt that. But for Torah Chof, for example, the whole Avarabba, that whole bracha, is all about this. All right, we're davening for Torah in a way that's chanan, just going back to that. And then and then right away we start to talk about tefillah. We start to talk about Eretz Yisrael, because these two things are mekushar, right? To draw Torah down in a way that's chanan, right? And that whole sugya of the menorah, and then getting into Eretz Yisrael. There are other things where we can see this. So again, but it doesn't prevent us from davening. The point of all of this is emotional connection. That's the point of all of this. That was the chiddush of the Baal Shem Rachmana Libabai. More than your brain, Hashem wants the heart. To get to the heart is to use the tnuas sechel. Then a person has a certain very unique kind of emotional connection, which isn't just detached and floating. It's as a result of what we learned, and that's why what we do Thursday nights, for example, we did last night, is not just if you could say in your word just a kumzitz. It's not just it's gaval. Even just a kumzitz would be beautiful that you should sing but because it comes on the back of what we've learned together in the half hour prior, which for many of the chaver who were there, which is many of us last night, and we do invite and encourage every person to come Thursday nights. It's something mashu yuchad ad lemood. Unless you have something else super crucial and pressing, please join us if you're here locally. So because it's riding on the back of the shiur, and for many of us, it's after a whole week of learning together. It's a whole different kind of emotional connection. It's a whole different kind of singing. It's with das. It's zamru maskil. It's not stam we're sitting around singing. It's zamru maskil, like we learned in Torah Gimel. The songs themselves are vehicles for our sechel. We have big sechel, chevra. We have big hasagas, big. We have to understand that. It's not a gaiva thing. It's just a fact. It's a reality. We cannot take for granted our perceptions of spirituality and Hashem and Torah are geuladik. We're free now. We're out of Geulah. And we're progressively on this journey of expanding and making sure not to allow, the outside influence to close our minds and hearts, but to keep them open. So our singing is a different thing. Our emotional connection is a different inyan legamre. Totally different inyan. And it's through Tenuas HaSeichel that's moiled Chaim Balev. Nimsa al yidei shefa aleki, says the Rebbe, through shefa aleki, sha'aseichel nishbala adam b'mechiros, that the seichel begins to come down quickly, easily, she'ein tzarich l'shtamish b'shum hakdama, al yidei zois ha'mechiros shal heves halev oile tamid me'ela. If a person accesses a kind of Torah where they're finally fluent enough, which is the goal, that a person should be fluent enough, you can open any sefer in Pnimius, you can understand it. Because you already know what all the Rosh Tevis are, you already understand what all the different levels are. That's the goal for all of us, that we should be rugil in this. This should be our bread and butter. We should be fluent. That's the idea. And for some it comes very naturally, for others it's a little bit more difficult. But with work, we can get to a point where it just, like for example, Likutei Moharan you read like Tehillim. It's just, you don't have to learn Likutei Moharan, you just read 30 pages at a time. Boom, 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 boom. And it comes in like Niagara Falls, like a torrent, straight sechel. You don't have to understand, and that's that. You can get to a point where you don't have to work it out. It's like swimming in an ocean. That's the bechina of achar, but then there's kedem. It's a different level. That's the ideal. And then, oh my gosh, the Chaim Balev. You don't know what to say. The only thing that you feel when you finish something like that is that you feel heartbroken that every Yid can't experience this, and that we're still having low-level conversations, fighting people about Hasidus and this and Pnimius and Nister and Nikla and Gullus and Geulah. And if only people would have a little inkling of what this is, Gesund and Stark, it wouldn't be a conversation, B'chlal. It is the simplest thing. It is Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. It's not a question, B'chlal. It's ridiculous. It's being Ma'ak of the Geulah. It is so obvious. So then you're a bit heartbroken. But on a selfish level, it's just, like Rebbe Nachman said, just about Likutei Moharan, he said the Shlach HaKadosh said about his sefer that it was Me'ein Olam Haba. Rebbe Nachman says, I'm telling you, my sefer is Olam Haba Mamish. It's not Me'ein Olam. There's nothing like it. Likutei Moharan, I bless us as a chabura, we should be able to finish Likutei Moharan, preferably while we're not all still here in person. We should be in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim as a chabura, and then we'll start Likutei Moharan. We're spending our eternity on this. We're in Olam Haba already. This is what we have to learn. It's all eternity. It's just endless. We'll see. But that's the idea. Then the heart is on fire and it burns on its own. And how do you get there, Chevra? But the way to get there, the way, and the Rebbe says the only way to get there is Ella, that we should be people who are working is to be people that are sanctifying the openings of our face, which is the mouth, the two nostrils, the eyes, and the ears. And then when a person purifies their senses, and it goes back to Torah, Yud Tes and Yud Ches, with regard to how we experience physicality, because that's what senses are, aren't they, right? This is the gate between the outside world and the internal world of the spirit. If a person cleanses those gates, meaning they know what to let in and what to keep out, and even within what to keep out, they know even there how to perceive those things and how to understand godliness is there too, etc. They become people who are in contact with the divine all the time. So then, then the senses become attuned to the Shefa Eloki that's in everything. And Mamela, when a person accesses Torah, it's the most potent place. You don't have to, with Cheshbonis, God is present, and we can access the deepest part of Torah, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is flowing forth like a Nahar Shotef, like a powerful river. So what does it mean to purify our mouth, our nose, our eyes, our ears? Says the Rebbe, simple. Hainu, sheyishmars atzmen lahaitzi sheker mipiv. Purifying our mouth means not to say sheker. Okay, that's number one. A person should work on sheker. Not to say anything untrue. And there are gradations. Everybody knows there's guzmaris, there's exaggerations. That a person should, because again, all these madrigas, there's millions of madrigas. It can mean actually not to lie. Okay, some people are on that madriga. And then sometimes a subtlety, and sometimes we say something, we whatever it is. To say the emes, that's A. V'yila yira shamayim, and then a general sense of yira, shu b'chinas chaytem, which is connected to the two nostrils, b'chinas v'harichai b'yiras Hashem, which now we've learned a number of times, right, in the previous Torah as well as in Torah Beis, like we mentioned yesterday, that Mashiach smells and senses with yira shamayim. V'yila, okay, that's that. V'yila amunas chachamim. And we should be connected to tzaddikim, hatali bu'udnin, which are how to sanctify and purify the ears, b'b'chinas shma divrei chachamim, to listen to the divrei chachamim, and then v'yatzem einov mira'os bara, that we should close our eyes from seeing that which we're not supposed to see. That's what it means to guard, literally, to guard the eyes. And here he says this interesting thing about the eyes, particularly ki hein hama'orin es hashefali ki lavai. It really all depends on the eyes. The eyes are going to be the things that trigger the shefaliki to come down. So the eyes are the most important, maybe, of all of them, and the most difficult. So far we shouldn't say anything we're not supposed to say. Again, the Rebbe is trying to turn us into tzaddikim. He's not playing games. The Rebbe is not playing games with us. The Rebbe didn't want to be a Rebbe and have a bunch of Hasidim down there and the Rebbe's up here. The Rebbe wanted that each and every one of us should be tzaddikim. He's not going to rest until we are. He doesn't give. He doesn't care. He wants the Geulah, and that means that we need to be redeemed. He believes in us more than we believe in ourselves. He wants us to grow up. He wants us to grow up. He wants to mamish lift us up. So not to say sheker, to have yira shamayim tali in the chaytem. And again, all this is a process, not from one day to the next. A person works on these things. A long, long process. It could be a lifetime of work, but this is, at least we need to know the map, right? Otherwise, what are we doing? That's the nose is yira shamayim. The ear is connection to tzaddikim. Eyes is yatzem einamer eis barak. And that's gonna trigger the shefali ki lavai. Because, I want to clarify, it could be I made a mistake. It's not necessarily that line is only on the eyes. I think, no, here he's referring to all of them. Okay, I made a mistake. Although I still do believe that the eyes are particularly important, but okay. But it seems over here now, we're looking at it again, that he's referring back to all of them. All of these madrigas, ki, that's the word that threw me, right? Because because all of these different senses or capacities, the mouth and the nose and the eyes and the ears, are all tali on the mayach. They all are dependent on and connected to our consciousness, our level of understanding and perceptual awareness. And they can bring us to a place where we have access to the deepest messages of the Torah, where we can actually live it in a way that it shouldn't just be just the learning of it, ella hamaisa, to bring it down to life. How does the Rebbe know that all these different elements, the capacities of the face, are connected to the brain, to mayach? How does the Rebbe know anything? Psukim. Everything the Rebbe says, he backs up with a pasuk. Roish dvarcha emes. The pasuk says, Roish dvarcha emes. The opening, Rebbeinu Shalom, of your words are emes. Says the Rebbe, okay. And he's going to do this for all of the capacities now. Zebechinas moyach hanemar eitzel peh. Here we have a pasuk that links the mouth, which is saying emes, to Roish, to the mind. Roish dvarcha emes. Okay, so the mouth is a vessel channeling the Roish. V'zeh reishis Chochmah yiras Hashem. That's the nose, is Yiras Shamayim, Reishis Chochmah. Boom. This, this sense of smell, which is the inyan of the Chaytam, which is the inyan of Yiras Shamayim, is connected to Yiras Hashem. Zebechinas moyach hanemar eitzel Chaytam. This is the moyach that's linked to Chaytam.
Wait, why does he see the nose? Because that's the Yiras Hashem.
That's right? Because V'haricha b'yiras Hashem is the aspect of the nose. V'zeh b'chinas hoichach l'chacham v'yeveka. Give musar to the chacham and he will love you. Zeh b'chinas moyach chacham hanamar etzel udnin. Right? That it's the chacham who's able to hear words of guidance and words of musar and connection to tzaddikim that help them grow. That's right? L'chacham, because it's totally on the mind. But b'chinas in the aspect of shema divrei chachamim, a person should hear the words of chachamim. Shema is the ears, divrei chacham. And then it says by Adam and Chava, their eyes open. Says Rashi, what does it mean? Their eyes open? Their brain opened, right? And it means al shema machshava nemar. Sebechinas moyach hanemar eitzel einen. This is the aspect of the moichin that's linked to the eyes. That when a person has all of these different things activated, this is what it means to be a human. Behein hein shivas hanera, says the Rebbe. These are the 7 candles of the menorah: 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 2 eyes, and a mouth. Is 7. That means every human face that you look at is a menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. And our job as Kohanim Gedolim, which is all of us, is to kindle the flames of that menorah. The whole Yiddishkeit. That our ears should be shining, that our eyes should be shining, that our nose should be shining, that our mouth should be shining. This is called a Yid. That's basically everything you need to know. The Idach Zil Gemar. This is the whole Yiddishkeit. Imagine again, to bring it back to our teenagers, when they looked in the mirror, they saw a menorah. They understood what Yiddishkeit wants to make from them. Not big Rashi Yeshiva and Talmidei Chachamim, like that's the only thing that exists. Just pure Yidden, who are, in whatever way they're going to be, are vessels for the Geulah. In whatever way. Whether they'll be in business, whether they'll be in expressing artistic creativity, whether they'll be gedolim and learning in nigla or in nister, whether they'll be fill in the blank, masha yeh. But that they should be menorahs, with dancing flames of fire. That could be for everyone. It's time for a new system of education. It really, really is. The more time goes by and the more that we immerse ourselves in these teachings, the clearer and clearer it should become to us. We are selling our kids short. It's a form of abuse. I wrote an article about this about a long time ago, called Spiritual Abuse. It's a form of deprivation. Deprivation is abuse. If you withhold something that someone deserves, that someone needs for the development, that's called abuse. We are depriving our children of the part of Torah that they need the most. And then we wonder why there's so many issues. There aren't issues. There are symptoms of this issue. This is the issue. Those are symptoms. We have to heal the issue. How, who, when, who's going to have the courage to do it, within the current framework, outside the current framework, ani lo yodea. But I know that it's urgent. It's urgent. We need to expand the consciousness of our nation. And the key is, again, a person could just learn this paragraph from the Rebbe and it says, "A nice Torah, oh beautiful, the face is connected to the menorah." But the Rebbe, it's not a Torah, it's avodah. Do something with it now. Meaning, you understand, and that's called Amudas Chachamim, because otherwise it's something you read in a book. But over here, it's like Torah min hashamayim, like with the skashras to a tzaddik. If the Rebbe says your face is a menorah, your face is a menorah. You don't have a face anymore. You have a menorah now. You hear, it's a whole different level. It's not, and all of a sudden my whole perception of this thing called a face changed, because I don't know anything other than what's in this book and what's in these books. This is where I get my first principle knowledge. Not from culture, that they told me I have a face and this is what a face is and maybe I'll find some symbolic meaning in it. This is now a face. The face is a menorah. That's what it is. You understand? It changes the whole way that we look at the world. This is our lens. And when this is our lens, all of a sudden everything changes. Because the Rebbe says, "Ki peh utrein nukba chochmah utrein einen utrein udnin," and he uses Aramaic here again. Nothing stam. The mouth, the two nukva chochmah, the 2 nostrils, the 2 eyes, the 2 ears. Hein bechinas shivas haneros o menarta daresha. And the actual menorah, right? These are the branches of the menorah. The menorah is your whole head. Hainu hamayach, which is the brain that sits behind all of the different parts of all the different candles. Pnei HaMenorah hainu shefa aliki. And the shefa aliki that supports this whole structure, or that's coming down through, is the central line, is called Pnei HaMenorah, is the front-facing central aspect of the menorah. Go a little bit weiter. Succah. Okay, so we thought, again, even this Torah. Okay, we're talking about the menorah. Boom. No, we're talking about Succah. Okay, here we go. It's like, he takes you, and that's why people ask, which Torah is like Rebbe Nachman, where is his drush on Succah? Like, what are you talking about, drush on Succah? Every Torah is about Kehal Yedidim Geulah. Pick one, anyone. They're all about Succah. Okay, this one happens to mention Succah, but it's not about Succah. It's about a Geulah Elokim Lamala that is beyond the whole Torah. It comes down into the Torah. The Torah holds it like a vessel. It's not. So now he's talking about Succah. This is the aspect of Succah. Ki Sukkos, what's the whole thing of Sukkos? Sukkos b'chinas sechel b'ruach hakodesh. Succah means why is the sukkah called a sukkah? Because it covers, it is above and beyond us. There's a lashon in Chazal sechel b'ruach hakodesh. A person is able to be experiencing the settling, like mirachefes, like the hovering of sukkah of ruach hakodesh above that person. I think this is about Sarah. It says sechel b'ruach hakodesh. Ki ruach hakodesh is shefa aliki. Ruach hakodesh and shefa aliki is the same thing. Sechel b'ruach hakodesh means the ruach aliki comes upon us from above. The sukkah zaisi ba al yidei shivas ananim, and the sukkah comes from 7 clouds. We know. Keneged, Anani HaKavod, and we know that for each and every one of the nights of Sukkot, we have another ushpiz, we have another guest. And the ushpizin are the aspect of these 7 clouds. Interestingly enough, the Gemara in Taina says, Minayin shelachot tzadik v'tzadik asla HaKadosh Baruch Hu chaziz. There's a whole discussion in the Gemara, what's a chaziz, my chaziz? Basically, it means that for every tzaddik, HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates a cloud. Every tzaddik has a cloud. So al pi pnimius, we're talking about the 7 primary tzaddikim, the SHIURIM, and each of them is connected, one of the Anani HaKavod, and we see that on Sukkot. Hanabachina shivas haneres, which correlate to these 7 branches of the menorah, to the 7 openings of the face. Shal yadam ha'asig ha'adam masig pnei menorah, and that's why Sukkot is connected to the 7 days, which is the 7 tzaddikim, which are the 7 clouds. For what purpose? Because ultimately, it's all about the sukkah. It's all about sechel b'ruach hakodesh. Hainu sukkah, hainu shefa aliki. V'ruach hakodesh nikra al shem ha'chochmah, ki ruach chochmah haba mikodesh ki yedua. Why is it called ruach hakodesh? Kodesh, like many words in Lashon HaKodesh, if not all of them, is a code word. Which sphere is kodesh a code word for? Kodesh, shemen mishchas kodesh. Chochmah. Chochmah is always Kodesh, and Chochmah are these are synonymous things. It's a code word for Chochmah. So it's Ruach HaKodesh because it's this aspect of the Shefa Eloki, which is Chochmah, that comes from that realm beyond, the aspect of the makif that becomes pnim. How do we know that the only thing that we can use for schach is something that is not mekabel tuma uvedavar shegidulah min haaretz, and it has to be something that has grown from the ground? Shenamar, as the pasuk says, ve'ed yale min haaretz, because aid, the mist, rose up min haaretz. So the Gemara learns from these 2 parts of this 4-word formulation. You see these 2 halachas. Eid yala, says the Gemara, ma eid hu davar she'ein mekabel tuma. It is something that's not mekabel tuma. It's just a mist. It's not a kli or anything that can be mekabel tuma. It's just water particles. Ve'ein gedulei ela min haaretz, and it says eid yala min haaretz. So from here you learn about the schach from the eid yala min haaretz, which is a confounding drasha, a makesher. Right? What's the connection between that and schach and sukkah? What's the? Says the Rebbe, because what was the whole thing about the sukkah? Sukkah is anani hakavod. What's an anan, a cloud, made out of? An aid. Says the Rebbe. So yes, we're talking about the anani hakavod. Aid hein elo ananim. The cloud is the aspect of the dew, of the mist, rather. Ve'hem b'chinas kodesh, and that's the aspect of kodesh. So it can't be mekabel tuma because it's ruach hakodesh, because it's shefa eloki, which comes from the place of Chochmah. Ugedelim min haaretz, and who's going to be able to access this? Ugedelim, that mist, that cloud develops min haaretz. Kitzarach hamakabel azel yis chacham, because the person needs to already be a chacham. I wrote a little bit about this in the Shavuos pamphlet, if anybody made it all the way to the end, where because the Gemara says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the pasuk is, Yahiv chachmas al hakimin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives chachma to a person who already has chachma, like the pasuk says, Tein lechacham v'yachkam oid. You will only give to a chacham, a person who has chachma. Then you will give chachma. How do we get chachma? Purifying our face. It was to those who had already become wise that through their wisdom they activated the heart of a lev called chacham lev. That moyeled chamimas chaim balev as a result of the chachma. Over there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives chachma, and from there come the ve'ediyala min haaretz. What's the kasher to aretz? And the answer is that we learned, if you remember, in Torah Ches, in the beginning of Torah Ches, we learned about what it means to be no, not in Torah Ches, I'm sorry, there also a little bit, but we learned in Torah Dalid that what does it mean to be a chacham? Turn back if you have it in front of you. Turn to page Gimel Amud Beis, which is Oy Zayin. This is all the way back in Torah Dalid. And it's good to do review. It's good to do review to get things clear. Go to the end. What is a Talmud Chacham? Talmud Chacham u'bechinas Moshe shemesim atzme k'shirayim. He makes himself like just the smallest and in pieces. Ish Moshe anav ma'od ha'yidei nikra ish chacham. Why is a person called a chacham? When they're humble. Chachma me'ayin timatzeh. Chachma can emerge from ayin, right? And so here we have the pasuk ve'ed yale. Who's going to be able to access this aid, which is the Anani HaKavod, which is the Bechina of Succah, which is the 7 clouds, which correlate to the 7 openings of the mind, of the face, which are the 7 branches of the menorah, to Iru Pnei HaMenorah? And the answer is Eidiyala min haaretz. They have to come from a humble person. Humility sits at the core. When a person humbly wants to enter into service, when a person remembers their life is not hefker, their life is not theirs. We have a guf, and the guf is powered by the neshama, and our neshama is the guf klape HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is in our neshama. He is the he's the neshmasa the neshama. He is the soul of our soul. We are not independent beings. We spoke about this last night. The toes wiggling, for those who were there, had to be there. Sorry. So the toes wiggling. They're not independent. They're part of the body. We are part of a structure. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is acting through us. It's a completely different way of conceiving what it means to be human. But when a person humbly enters into that service, then they can begin to work on the eyes, on the ears, on the nose, on the mouth. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends you shefa eloki, and then your whole world opens up. And then you're, like Rebbe Nachman said, HaMashiach sheli kfar higia. And me personally, I'm out of exile. Exile is all around me, but I'm walking in what the Ramchal would call tevas nayach. There's a mabel, but I'm protected in the teva that the Ramchal says in the beginning of Adar Bamarim is the Zara Kaddish. He says, is the teva. He says, at the end of the days, the world is going to be destroyed. And those who know how to escape into the inner realm of the Zayar, that's tevas nayach. Maybe we'll learn that together also. There's a lot to learn together. Maybe one day. Kehal Yedidim. Thank you. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we should only hear B'suras Taivas Be'ezus Hashem for all of Klal Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
על כל נשימה שאני